39A IMCA in the Declaration of Liberty Safeguards process is in effect very similar to that as an IMCA in any of the other decision-making processes, in that you really want to know about the individual, you really want to know about their circumstances, what their life's like, and it's a matter of talking to them when possible and finding out from staff or from friends and families that may be remote, but at least have an input and some knowledge of the individual. What is available to that person? Is it true that there is no alternative placement or a least restrictive option? You talk to everybody that's involved, and you really need to read the mental health assessment and the mental capacity assessment to inform, to see, is this the individual that you see in front of you? Does that work for as far as their mental capacity is concerned? Having compiled all your information, and it is necessary to write a report which goes to the local authority, to the supervisory body's office, and also be good to send it to the best interest assessor. It's very useful to have conversations with the best interest assessor about whether restrictions can be put in to an authorisation, or indeed whether you want some removed that the best interest assessor is proposing. So a conversation is the easiest way of getting around that. So talking to a best interest assessor is great. It's not often that you actually get to see the person who did the mental health assessment. They're all done at different times, but you can still read what's there. You won't want to be writing a report until you've read the other assessments. And what you're doing with the best interest assessment is to contribute to their report. So you certainly need to know about what the mental capacity issue is and what the mental health issue is. A typical example of being a 39A IMCA would be going to a care home where an individual is placed, looking at meeting them, seeing what their communication skills are and how they communicate, reading their files to see what the care needs are and how they're being met, and seeing what might be available to the individual as a less restrictive alternative. In a particular case, a gentleman was used a wheelchair but spent most of his time in bed. It turned out that the wheelchair wasn't appropriate for his size. He was a very large gentleman and he slipped out of his wheelchair. And he became anxious about being in the wheelchair, as well as the staff were anxious about having to pick him off the floor. So it kind of got left. He was more comfortable staying in his room in bed than he was actually getting out as much as he could, even into the garden, because of the wheelchair. So one of the recommendations the advocate made to the best interest assessor, having discussed it with him, was that the home should make inquiries and the right referrals to have a proper fitting wheelchair for the gentleman, on the assumption that that will be the least restrictive, give him more access to the community, more access around the home, and hopefully when he'd had it, it would give him the confidence to use it knowing it was the right chair. And that was put in place. It was made a condition of the DoLS, and eventually he got his new wheelchair, and now he accesses the garden, albeit with support, because he's not able to push it himself because of a stroke. They are actually now going to change his wheelchair for an electric version. We're going to try him out on an electric version, see if he can manage that to make it even less restrictive. (39B) IMCA doesn't actually exist. It seems to have got lost somewhere in the structure of the regulations and the code of practice, and it never came out. No one knows and could tell me anymore why or what happened to a 39B. So forget anything about 39Bs, they don't exist. 39Ds, on the other hand, are there, put in place after an authorisation is granted to support an unpaid RPR, a relevant person's representative. Usually family members or unpaid people who don't know anything about the Mental Capacity Act or anything about deprivation of liberty safeguards, all the process and the rights that they have to be, in their role. And they are entitled to have the support of an advocate, and one should be referred for as soon as an unpaid RPR is put in place. First of all, a an unpaid RPR has to know that they're entitled to have some support from a professional advocate. They are able to request the support of an advocate through the supervisory body, and the supervisory body must supply one. It is only to support the RPR in their roles to knowing what their responsibilities are. Sometimes during the course of life, an unpaid RPR may pass away, may get too frail, or making life too difficult for them to continue in their role as RPR. And whilst the supervisory body is looking for a new one, they will appoint a paid RPR, an advocate, for the 39C role. All this gives you the power to be an RPR for a short space of time. It's the interim before when one person stops and until another one is found. Other than that, the local authority can appoint a paid RPR, which is not necessarily an advocacy role, but is often supplied or contracted by the local authorities from advocacy providers. The difference between a 39C and an RPR is that a 39C is a paid person, usually an advocate, in the role as RPR. And it is for a short space of time only. It's a temporary measure between the appointment of a permanent RPR, from losing one RPR to getting another one. This is because the Act and the Code say that a person must always be represented. So there mustn't be gaps, and that's there to fulfill the gap. The things to look out for when you may get a referral for a 39C is to ask the question, or look into whether this is temporary, i.e. does the supervisory body have someone else in mind, it's just that they're making contact with them, or is it likely to be longer term? If it's longer term you're looking at, then the local authority needs to appoint a paid RPR if they can't find the unpaid one very quickly. The role of the 39A IMCA is the one that you're going to see referrals for most often. Virtually everyone that lacks capacity and doesn't have any family will need a 39A IMCA. The others, really, 39C is very rare, and the 39D is not common at all, although perhaps it should be referred to more often than it actually is.